Once again, a very good evening to you and a very warm welcome to Sweet Omagh Town Internet Radio, coming to you from the heart of Omagh, County Tyrone. And as I look to the right, I see my co-presenter, Declan Ford.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. McGurgan. You know, it's great to be here. You know what I've been doing today? I've been power hosing. You're leather hosing, I'm power hosing.
Yeah, I'm draining.
I know.
Oh, I am
very draining.
I am drained.
No, I've been out power hosing all day and I'm going to take full advantage of the next few days. I'm going to have the place red up and beautiful.
And then what?
And then I'm going to sit back and just reflect on the labours that I have accomplished. And I'm going to listen to all the previous editions of Sweet Omagh Town.
Why do I not believe you?
Because you can't believe a word comes out of my mouth. You know what I was actually thinking about today very seriously?
What?
I came across old school photographs. Do you remember the big, long school photographs?
Oh, the whole class get together up on top of the scaffolding. That's
class, the whole school.
Yes, I remember those. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
You know, and then of course you have, you know, they talk about these urban folk tales. The story, you know, where they're always in legend. There was one student who stood at one side, say the left-hand side, and the camera clicked and swiveled. And so he, once his photograph was taken, jumped down and ran right to the other side, so he was there at the other side. I'm telling you.
I tell you, do you believe that?
No, I do not.
Talk about slow shutter speed. Try and say that again.
But you remember in the days when you used to get the school photographs? I don't know if your teachers were like mine, but the teacher actually used to hold the photographs up as he gave them out.
Oh, I do.
You know,
and
you know,
there were three, weren't there? There were
There's
sixpence each, I think, and you brought them home, and you got 1, 2, or 3.
That's
and
right.
I don't think there were any photographs of our family before we went to school. We got the
Right.
old school photograph kept.
Right.
I could show you 1 or 2.
So I can imagine you've cut every one out and stuck them all together and said a family group photograph.
I'm like an extra in Angela's Ashes.
Do you know, I must tell you, I was going over to America once. You know, I would go over and do little odd things down in West Virginia. And I happened to meet a gentleman in Dublin Airport, a big American. He was over to play golf. And just to make conversation as we stood at the concourse and we watched the luggage go round.
The carousel.
Yeah, the carousel, yeah. And I said, you've been over in Ireland? You're over there? And he says, yeah, I'm over to play golf. I says, in fact, I'm from Ireland. I couldn't discern what part of Ireland his accent was. I says, really? He says, I'm from Limerick. Oh, I said, oh, Frank McCourt country. And he looked at me with a look that would kill, and he was very verbally abusive about Frank McCourt, because how dare he write this about Limerick? You know, he thought it did an incredible disservice to Limerick and his mother in particular. And but to be honest, I think what McCourt was doing, he was reflecting what life was like.
From his version.
From his version.
And no, Terry Wogan didn't like it either now.
Right, of course he was from Limerick.
He would have been, yeah,
well.
originally, yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah.
As I think was Richard Harris.
Ah,
yes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I used to go down to Limerick. I had a late friend in Shannon, and we went down to Limerick, and it was a very forbidden city. And this was just before, remember it got a very bad name about 20 or so years ago. It was very forbidden, you know, and it looked like a very poor Dublin, the Georgian houses.
But there was a lot of poverty about in those days, you know.
Oh, there was, surely.
Real poverty,
You
I remember. Like yourself, I met a friend of mine on the holidays some time ago. He and I were in the same class in primary school.
Uh-huh.
He was one of a very large family. We were a big family. They were mega big, right? And he says, I learned to swim before I could walk.
Right.
Because we always were bedwetters. And he says to her mum, he says, poop in the shallow end of the night.
Oh.
But he said that's not the way it was. In those days, he says, when there was maybe 8-10 boys in the house and a 3-bedroom house, he says that's what you had to do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so,
you know, and I remember a friend of mine who came from a big family. He says the house was that small. He says one half of us would have to breathe in and the other half breathe out.
The guy says, we were so poor, he says, we had to buy the budgie chest expanders.
Yeah, oh dear, oh no.
Stop
This is getting into Les Dawson territory. And our house was so old, even the mice had powdered wigs. You know. Oh, awful. But I remember at primary school, I remember one poor, unfortunate young fella in the class. And you know, he came in wearing, remember the old hobnail boots with, you know, the hobnails in them?
Yes, I
obviously
do,
passed down.
Yes.
You know, and you know, when looking back now, I'm talking. I went to school. I started school in the late 50s and would have gone through my primary school up to 1967 in Uri, in the Brothers, in the Abbey.
Yes.
And then down to Omagh and places like that. But, you know, there was poverty in Uri, and I would say Omagh was no different.
No different at all, no.
You know, and that's what I have found heartening and also quite sad about a lot of the interviews that we have done, is when the people were talking about the, you know, like the housing stock and the lack of work and the lack of opportunity that there was for many people. You know, it kind of gives you a pause, and you think, you start counting your own blessings and realise we're kind of lucky now.
No.
But primary school, I loved primary school.
What sort of books did you read at primary school?
Oh, let's see. Well, I remember our library consisted. Now I'm talking about now when I was advanced in years, when I was a P6.
Yes.
Right, P6, and getting ready for the 11 plus, and the library consisted of 4 shelves, and I remember picking out a brown book by Paul Brickell. It was about the size of slightly bigger than a cigarette packet. It was Reach for the Sky.
Yes.
The story of Douglas Bader. And I remember reading that, and I thought this was wonderful. And then, in terms of the books, though, the not the library books, the ordinary books. Now, I remember.
Did the teacher read to you?
I think so, yeah. But
Maureen Kelly was our teacher in Edinburgh Carson. She was great. She would sat and read, especially on a Friday afternoon.
Right.
Everything was a bit quiet. She'd sit down and read. I remember she read The Call of the Wild, Jack London.
Jack London, yes.
And Avalanche. Can't remember who that was by. And Robinson Crusoe. Ooh. Oh, we were read too.
Robinson Crusoe would have been a difficult book for youngsters. You think it was written away, the 18th century?
Yes, I know.
Tough enough,
Yeah.
the language. You know, but I remember the reading books, and I remember Dick and Dora.
Oh, that's it. Do you remember the Wide Range Readers? Was that what it was?
I vaguely remember that, you know.
Just hold a second and I will just find my little copy of the Wide Range Readers, Mr. Ford.
Yes.
1 second.
Aha.
Hold on. There we are.
Aha. I have it here. I have Green Book 6.
The magic of radio.
Look at that, for goodness sake.
Right.
And these were aimed at the 7 to 11-year-olds.
Yes.
So you're talking about what? P3 up to P7.
7, yes.
And, you know, when you look at it, I don't must. Do you mind if I
Read me a story from
I'll read you a poem.
Will you? Okay.
Oh, young Lochinvar has come out of the west. Through all the wide border his steed was the best, and save his good broadsword he weapons had none. He rode all unarmed, and he rode all alone. So faithful in love and so dauntless in war, there never was a knight like the young Lochinvar. He stayed not for brake, and he stopped not for stone. He swam the Esk river, where ford there was none. But ere he alighted at Netherby gate, the bride had consented, the gallant came late, for a laggard in love and a dastard in war was to wed the fair Ellen of brave Lochinvar. Now imagine reading that when you're P6. Think of the impact that would have on you.
Wouldn't it?
You know, and
Yes.
looking at the illustrations.
Do you remember, I remember reading, there was some good stories now. The Flying Doctor was one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll actually, I can't believe it.
Right.
Flying Doctor.
Ah, is it there?
This is the first story.
Oh boy, remember this.
5 o'clock in the morning at Callaloula, 300 miles from anywhere. Judy, Gareth and Sheila had been awake most of the night, for mother was very ill and there was no one to help them. Callaloula was a dry and dusty outpost of Australia. No one ever passed it except occasional stockmen and cattle drovers, and father was away for 6 or 7 weeks at a time. 5 o'clock, said Gareth. Another whole hour till 6, murmured Sheila. At 6 o'clock they would be able to contact the Flying Doctor by radio, and even if he could not come to the house, he would be able to tell them what to do.
Dear God.
I can't go on, it just gets me there.
That got me interested in amateur radio when I was 5 or 6 years of age, because I could imagine this guy sitting with a sort of wind-up radio,
Yeah.
and the airplane coming to land and
Right.
save them and bring back to...
Well, you know what we could do with the Flying Doctor now? I think of all this the trace and test.
Could indeed.
You know, but But when you actually look at it, you really see how advanced things have become. The illustrations were, to say they were simple would be an understatement. Colour, 2 colours, black and white.
Yeah, but the illustrations were lovely, Declan.
Oh yeah, and they're very much of their time. I mean, this was, I see, published.
It's very much, you got your moral compass from those books, really, at the time, didn't they?
1953.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think this is where I was first introduced to kind of nonsense verse. Lewis Carroll, "Ho ho! You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right?" I love nonsense like that, you know. But, it was just, it's so simple.
And those books have become very collectible because they all got dumped out many years ago in schools and had no value at all. Now, as a collection.
This is in remarkably good condition as well.
That was a teacher's book.
The Vagabond, yes.
Yes.
By Robert Louis Stevenson. "Give to me the life I love, let the lave go by me, give me the jolly heaven above when the byway nigh me." Wonderful stuff all
The Old Woman of the Road. Remember that poem?
Oh yes, oh to have a little house. They by Padraig Colum. But they're all tearjerkers.
Oh, just it's like
Hank
Williams songs, you know, around the same time.
The Hillbilly Shakespeare.
Yes.
You know, and look, you know, when you think about how this tied in with, and I see they were repeated now on satellite television, The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Is it back on again?
Back on again. Made in the late 50s. Richard Green, Archie Duncan.
Where is it on?
Talking Pictures. It delves into those old series. And then there's one, Sir Lancelot.
Oh, yes.
It's appalling. It's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. And then The Legend of William Tell.
Yes.
And I empathised with the wee fellow, you know, the son, he stands with the apple on his head and the father shoots it with a crossbow, and you know. And I remember watching that, and then I didn't see a crossbow again till the golden shot. Remember Bob Monkhouse?
Right.
And that's Bernie the Bolt.
Bernie the Bolt. That's right. And I can imagine the number of outtakes must have never seen the light of day.
Lord,
danger that we firing an arrow at someone now.
Yeah.
Aye.
I mean, Bob Monkhouse, I think, was greatly underrated. It was only when he died, I think, that people appreciated him. You know, and he came out with a great line. He says, "When I told people I wanted to be a comedian, they laughed at me. They're not laughing now," he said.
Oh, I know.
Very clever.
He said he walked past his local undertakers and he's seen a photograph of himself, said, "Coming soon."
Right, oh. But though I think what went against me, he was smarmy and he was smooth.
Yes,
You know, but I believe in his private life, you know, that he was recording away television programmes, radio programmes, and building up an archive.
Yes.
You know, and it's thanks to him. I think there's still a lot of those programs are still available.
That's right. Very few people had the foresight to keep those programs. Really, they're all gone.
Yeah.
RTE, all the sponsored programs, nothing exists.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You and I might have whatever bits and pieces are left. There's very few people, if any more.
Absolutely.
Anyway, now we're on the subject of schools and reading books and things. I suggest we play an interview with the late Bill Potts.
Oh,
Billy
yes.
Potts.
Yes.
Remember him? Yeah.
I do indeed. He started off, I think, what year was it?
I'm going to ask you where you were on the 6th of March, 1996. It's approximately 8 p.m, Mr. Ford.
I was probably drinking tea in Bill Potts' house with you.
That's exactly where you were.
And he lived in Clements.
Hospital Road,
Hospital Road.
Yes, that's right. Though he's born in New Brighton Terrace, he's another hill man.
Yeah. My abiding memory of the interview was that the way the affection that he had for the area.
Oh yes.
And the way he talked very fondly about the community spirit.
Yes. And you know his life story or his interview is as a recording of the passage of time and how things change. Because he started off as I'm not going to say too much about it, but he started off as and working for GNR in the railway, and then into to what had been the Throne Education Committee then, which later became the Western Educational Library Board.
WELB, now the EA. Yeah.
Yes. And when you think of it, he was in charge, or one of the people in charge of sorting out the school transport. But before that, he was a welfare officer looking after school attendance. So his name was, I suppose, one to thread fear. You know, Mr. Potts is the man, and he didn't like that. You know, I remember him saying he didn't really like that because that wasn't his character at all. But it was a figure of fear that Mr. Potts, attendance officer, could come out and.
Well, it was, I'm not saying the bogeyman is maybe taking it too far, but a way of maybe let's say, how will you put it, encouraging children to stay in school.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yes.
But it was another time. It was
Yes.
It was like school in those days. It was a much different place.
There were, there were no sort of educational psychologists or no one there to help out. I mean, he would have had to go around and try and second guess how many children were going to need school buses. When you think of it logistically, when he had no computers or anything to base that on, they said at one stage they had to ask the children, have you any brothers or sisters at home, to see if, how many seats they need on a bus. And then they would have farmed some of it out to Ulster bus, and then they had to commission these yellow buses and get them organised and bought and things. So, tremendous man, good organiser when you think of what he done all his life. Yeah.
And the way that schools changed and the education authority changed, certainly it was improving each time.
Yes.
With each change.
Yes. And we do talk about the past, but when you start looking at the past, sometimes it is where it should be, and that is the past. But you can get a better sense of yourself when you do.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. There is an old maxim that you'll not know where you're going until you know what you've come from, and I think there's a great truth in that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But he was also one of the members of the YMCA in Omagh as well. I'm not sure if you remember the original YMCA, Declan. It would have been where the Tourist Information Office would have been in later years, just at the edge of Scarf Centre.
Right. Up near where the county cinema would have been.
Adjacent to that. And then I think they maybe went down to Campsie, to the site where Graham's Printing Works had an old print factory down there before they moved out to the Gorton Road. And I think the YMCA took that over.
Was it not like a Nissan Hut?
I don't remember that.
Right.
No, I can't say.
Vaguely remember it, But he was very, very, very staunch supporter of the YMCA and the good work that it has done.
Yes. And since I saw you last, I came across a tape of the late Marcus Pickett. Remember him?
Oh, by you talking about him, I never met the man.
It was actually the late Dr. Mitchell and myself would have maybe talked to him. And I played it last night, but I'll get it up on air fairly soon. He remembered Omagh 1910, 1915, and takes us on a sort of a cook's tour of Omagh, all the shops and what they did. And some of them actually still there, still the same trade names, but so much has changed. You talk about saddleries and tea rooms and various things. It'll be interesting listening when I get it up on the air now as well.
I look forward to that.
All in good time. And I'm very pleased with the Melody Aces programme. It seems to have struck a chord the length and breadth of Ireland, I tell you.
Well, that is brilliant, and it's just nice that people are still mindful of what those musicians did and what they brought. I mean, when you think of it, you think of Ireland in the 1950s, the late 50s. We were still, we were grey, and they brought colour into people's lives. And I suppose it coincided with the rise of the teenager as well, and the rise of the Beatles, and suddenly the world changed.
Yes.
Great to hear it. I look forward. Are we still going to do the dance at Christmas?
Well, that's the plan in this case. All right, well, who knows? We may have a real dance instead of a Zoom dance.
Hello. Are you still Zooming, by the way?
Oh, by goodness sake, Declan. Yes, every day.
My God.
I get weary sometimes.
Right.
But I struggle. But by Christmas, I shall be.
I think you should be Zooming.
I'll make you fall in love with the fire extinguisher over there, and you'll go home and tell Marie.
Do you think so?
I want to end the marriage.
That's right. You've got into what? Hypnotism?
A form of hypnosis, yes. It's called. It's a very mild form of hypnosis. It's for people who are under stress and stuff. It's nothing to do with stage hypnosis at all.
All right.
But I shall talk about that in the near future.
Oh, now, Donald, I've seen you put many's a person to sleep.
I certainly did in my long life. Tell me, what's your plans for the rest of the week, Mr. Ford?
Oh, get the garden. I'm still on gardening leave. I have the Christmas poem finished.
Ah,
As you know, I write a Christmas poem every year. And it is being printed as we speak. I print them in black and white, and then I hand colour approximately 100. And so they're done. I just inspiration struck me last week.
Oh, your little book and CD, Mr. Ford.
We're working on that now, and I'm hopeful that we will have a little launch on Sweet Omagh Town.
Why not?
And because the book is going towards a good cause, and there are 25 poems, including a few songs, and some very fine musicians backed me on it. Seamus and Andy McGlone and Tom Sweeney, our good friend. So we'll work on that. We'll
Right,
keep the
okay,
good people of
okay.
Omagh informed.
Will our good listeners get a little discount or a little special signature in your
Well,
book?
there's
or
only
something?
1,000 copies, and all the profits are going to a charity that's very close to my heart.
Tell us about it, will you?
Well, it's the Little Birds project in Bangkok, and I've been over to Bangkok to see the work that they do. They actually are involved with the Mercy Centre, which is an orphanage set up by a Redemptorist priest called Father Joe Mayer, who is a force of nature. And Father Joe set up an orphanage. He was living in the biggest slum, Klong Doi, in Bangkok. And he has built an orphanage and schools, and his mantra is go to school, go to school, go to school, and which actually ties in nicely with what we're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
And his mission in life is to take the young children off the street, because a lot of them are taken into that. Bangkok is notorious for a certain lifestyle, and a lot of young girls in particular are taken off or on the streets, and they go into that trade.
Yes.
Because the families are that poor, and it is, in a way, I'm not saying it's expected, but it's an option. But Father Joe takes the children off the streets, and he has such a close connection with the police that when the police find any orphan children, they immediately take them to Joe Mayer. And I've been in the orphanage,
Right.
and the orphanage is that well run that there's parts of it that Joe Mayer doesn't even get into. Ian, he set it up. It is so tightly controlled. They have house mothers who look after the children, and they are sitting there and they're watching everything like a hawk. And a friend of mine has organised music classes, and he is a volunteer there as well. And I've seen the work that they do, and the Little Birds, specifically for the children who are born with AIDS, the orphans who, when they're 18, have to leave the orphanage. But these young adults, or late teens or young adults, whatever you want to call them, sometimes they can be cast adrift, and the Little Birds has been set up. It's a safe house where their medication is sorted out, that they try to get them involved with work, the world of work, and integrate them into society. And the volunteers who work there and the staff, most of them have AIDS themselves. And I think it's a very worthwhile cause, because these poor children have been born with an illness that is not of their making.
No. Well, look, you have some interviews with that fellow Joe Mayer.
I have some wonderful interviews. He is, as I say, when you hear the interviews, he's a force of nature. And I've put on a few concerts. We've raised some monies and have brought it over. And so I decided that I would do the book, the first 25 poems, and all the profits will go to the Little Birds, go directly to the Little Birds. There's no middleman at all.
Good.
And I will ensure that the...
Well, then we'll have a little programme about that, maybe in the next couple of weeks.
I would appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. Ford, thank you for your time.
I think the world is just waiting on my poems now.
Oh, well, somebody's waiting on them, you know. It's not me, unfortunately. And if you'd like to contact us on this programme, well, you can do so by ringing us on 07717 32527, or you can email the programme at sweetomatown@gmail.com. You can find Sweet Omagh Internet Radio on YouTube or on Facebook. Okay, to see you again, Declan, thanks for your company, and we'll leave you in the memories of the late and great Billy Potts.
I joined the railway in 1941, and I went in a skilling as a cleaner, and I was in a skilling for, I'm sure, a year or more. I had a knuckle up there, and was having that sort of pushed me onto the railway. And then I used to travel up and down, you know, and I was lucky. They gave me day work all the time because I was travelling, you know. There was a cleaner on in Omagh, and it was all night work, you see. So I myself then, he nearly got electrocuted one night. He was up something coal on one of the tenders of the engines, and there was a bare wire or something, and he went steady myself when I happened to catch the wire, you see, and I fell off the tender, and I was hurt. And he never came back again, and I put in for the job, and I got it, but it was night work all the time. So I was there for a good while, for maybe 3 or 4 years. And then, strangely enough, Willie McGrew, he came then to help out, and the two of us were on cleaning from 11 and 12 o'clock at night until 7 or 8 in the morning, One of us came on a wee bit earlier than the other, and then went off a bit earlier, But it was a chap called John Quinn. He would have been a brother of Eddie Quinn. Do you know Eddie Quinn? Well, he'd been a brother of Eddie Quinn, and he was what they termed as a fire dropper.
What was the fire dropper?
Well, the fire dropper, his job was to, whenever the engines came in and they needed the fire cleaned, what you did, you had this big long steel shovel, it was about 10 foot long maybe, and you put all the live coals from one side of the firebox over on top of the other live coals, and then when you had the dead cinders, then you started with the shovel to take out the dead cinders and throw them out. It was a job, it was an art in it, because at times it was very hot. But then you put all the red coals in back over to the clean side, and then you did the other side, you see. So that was the job that he had. And of course he cooled the engines too, out of a wagon up onto the tender. And then we, as the cleaners, we used to push the coal down into what they called the bunk. That's where the fireman would have been taking the coal out of, to put into the firebox. So, as I say, we did that for a long time, and of course the war was on, and there were a lot of extra trains at night, and there were good trains, goods trains coming in, and they had to be all split up in Omagh. Omagh was a centre point, you see, because you had Enniskillen and you had Derry, and you had stuff for Omagh too. And then the Derry trains coming in, there was stuff on them for Enniskillen and stuff on them for Belfast, So there was always a lot of shunting there. They shunted at night, and it was a tough enough job. And then we used to take a few wagons up to Fintona, bread wagons. The bread in those days came in big hampers.
And that would come from Belfast?
Yeah, they'd come in big hampers, like big wicker baskets, And we took those up to Fintona and we shunted them down into the station, for the bread men. And then we came from there and we went back to Omagh, and then we took another rake of wagons and we brought them down for the Ulster bus, down to the market yard. And of course, apart from the Ulster bus wagons, we had some for the bread men too, you see. So that's the way it operated, and that was an everyday thing in the morning, in what we called the late or the early shunt. You started at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And when would you finish?
Oh, you'd have finished about 2 maybe, But that was, it was an awful time in the morning to get up. I can tell you.
Winter time. But you would say the railway was essential to Omagh.
Oh, it was. I never should have closed it, I left it before it closed, because the writing was on the wall. And I was driving a rail car at the time, one of the small rail cars, there was 2 rail cars, a C1 and a C2. And I was driving them for years, And, there was apathy about the thing. Every station you went into, the station people, like the porters and the station masters, was, did you hear anything today, things like that. So there was a lot of apathy about, and I was playing tennis one night and I asked a fellow, did he know where I would get a job? And he said, it might be a job doing the education office, why don't you put in for it? So I put in for it, and I didn't think I had a hope of getting it at all, but as I'm strange enough I got it. So I switched over then in 59 to education, and I became an education welfare officer,
Well, how did you feel about leaving the railways? Were you sad when you had to leave the railways, or did you realise?
Well,
the
it was. I
writing
mean,
on the wall?
the railway was a good job in that you knew everybody, and there was a bit of a camaraderie about it, you know, and it was a good place to be, you know.
Was it very much a kind of a family concern?
It was, surely. I mean, a lot of people. My grandfather had been a railway man, you know. My uncle was a railway man, you know. So it was just in the family, you know. You just went on. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time on the railway, you know. And when I got out as a fireman, you see, on the engines, you know, I was only about 17 at the time, and I was as fit as a fiddle, you know. I used to come after walking from maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. Used to be what they call the 6:35 train. Used to leave Omagh and go to Portadown. And when we got the length of Carrickmore and Pomeroy, we picked up a lot of workers who were going then to work in McGashel, you see. So then I went from Portadown then back to Cookstown. Actually, I stopped in Dungannon and I waited on the mail train coming up from Belfast. And whenever the mail train went through, we got passengers for Cookstown, you see, and then we headed for Cookstown. And we left Cookstown then later on, and we came back to Dungannon, you know. So I did a lot of running up and down on the Cookstown line. Well, then another set of men would have came up from Omagh that we called passenger. They came, you know, as a passenger on the train from Omagh about 11:15 leaving Omagh. And when it arrived in Dungannon, they relieved us, you see. And then I got the train back to Omagh. Me and the driver would have got the train back to Omagh. And I remember going from there, I would have went into Omagh and I would have changed my clothes in a carriage, and I would have went to play football in a skilling for and things. And John, what I call him, he's up on the home here now, big John Gormley. He played football, played with him, you know. So, but those were good days, and as I say, I was fit as a fiddle. I could have run all night and run all day, you know. But those days are over now.
Well, how many years did you work on the railway then?
I was 18 years on the railway. And then, as I say, I saw the writing on the wall, and I thought I'd better make a move to get out, because what was worrying me was the fact that undoubtedly it would have been changed away, probably Belfast or somewhere, you know. And Hannah, my wife, she didn't want that, you know. So I started to look out for a job, just so I was lucky enough, you know, because I fitted in all right in the education welfare, you know, although it was certainly very awkward at the beginning.
Where were you based then when you started with the education?
I was based here in Omagh.
And whereabouts in Omagh was that?
We were around, the main offices were around where the prep department was. That's where the offices were. Now, I'd be right in saying that after we left it and went out to the hospital road there, prep department took over then.
Oh, in the academy?
Aye, they took over, you see. So it was, well, I enjoyed it too, because, you know, I made friends and I got on all right. I wasn't too keen on the school attendance work, you know, because you weren't schooling the children, you were getting schooled at the parents. I used to hate it. I hated going to court. I hated going to court. And then after that, then I was changed. I got a job then as in transport, school transport, you know, and I loved that. That was great, you know. And then I knew every hole in the hedge, you see, with being on school attendance. I knew every place, you know. So there was no bother to me. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, you know. And of course, whenever I started in 59, you could have counted the number of buses in your one hand. Now that was in the whole of County Tyrone. And by the time I left, there was something like 273 buses. And I had a lot to do with putting on new buses and organising what routes the buses would take. How they would pick up the children and take them to school. And the buses went out in the morning first, and they took in all the children who would be going to high schools or secondary schools, technical schools. They brought them either into Omagh or into a centre point like Mountfield or Dromore or Fitton, name it. And then they picked up then by Ulster bus. And then our own buses then would have went back out again, and they would have picked up children for the primary schools in the different areas, So it was a fairly, it was a good service. There's no doubt about it, not because I had anything to do with it, but I was, I never liked the idea at the time Lord Milsett. He brought about, parental choice, and it wrecked the whole thing. You see what's happening today? They're going to have to pay. Because you see, what happened, if you had an area, let's take Mountfield, you had an area, you had a wee school, Cashel, you had Off American, you see, and those schools were contributing to like a St Patrick's and St Bridget's, you see, and there was no other school allowed, that was there where they went, and they knew that, and there never was any trouble about them going, But when they started bringing in parental choice, you see, people, some of them living beside other, one wanted to go to that school, another wanted to go to this school, and it cost a fortune, So now it's all coming home to roost now, you see, and they're talking now about, turning the thing around, and there's going to be a lot of ill feeling over it, because most of the children, they all had, it wasn't so much the ones who were entitled to transport. If we had room in the bus, we took all the other children who lived on the road as concessionary pupils, you see. So the board gave an excellent service, to the country people. And now they're talking about making someone pay. I had to visit each school once a month, and my boss, he would say something to me about maybe school attendance or something. I used to say, look, I might not be doing the job the way you want me to do it, but to say, the day that you tell me something about a child that I don't know about, I'll worry then. So I mightn't be doing it the way you do. Maybe you'd go out and you'd be, giving the people bother and more bother than maybe enough, but you had to use a wee bit of psychology and try to get them to school, It was a tough job getting them, Some of them couldn't care less about the youngsters. Well, I knew people who went away to bingo and Dundalk, and then the children wouldn't be at school the next morning, and the teacher would be giving out, Well, that happened. I don't know whether it still happens, but that happened. And there was some homes you went to, I'm not kidding you, I don't know, we had welfare and all that thing, but I suppose some of them slipped the net too, but, the poor children, how they managed, I don't know. It was tough.
Yeah, some sad cases.
And I used to think too, the teachers didn't know enough about the children, I remember one day I went looking about a lad, and he was living down Brook Street, and it was a poor area, and it was in Fountain Lane, I think they called it. I went in anyway, and I was always on this lad's back, I was always, wanting about not being at school, you see, and the teachers were on about him too, but I went down, and I remember going in, and I'm not kidding you, the one lad hadn't even a table for to put a book on. And I went back to the school, and I told the teacher, said, look, that lad does his work at school. He hasn't a hope in hell of doing it at home. And I mean, the parents maybe were kind of half illiterate in themselves, you know. You see, so the lad wasn't getting any help, you know. And you had cases like that, you know. I dare say there are cases like that yet, where they don't get any help, you know. But however, you did your best, just, you know.
Well, how long did you stay on that side?
I was 9 years as a welfare officer, and then I went into transport.
Were you glad to get into transport?
And I was 30 years with the board, you know. And I thoroughly enjoyed the transport, you know. It was great to get out and meet people and talk to them, and drivers were all, you know, very helpful, you know.
What area then did you cover when you were involved in transport?
I covered, at first, before the reorganisation, I covered half of Tyrone, and the other chap covered the other half. He covered Cookstown, Dungannon, Ochmacloy, you know, that end, you know. I covered Strabane and Omagh and Fintna and as far up as Evanstown, and on round then into Carrickmore, you know, and Mountfield, and back to Plumbridge, you know, all that area, and Dunnamana, all that. So it was a big area.
And then you were responsible then for organising the transport into
That's
the
right,
school? Out of the school. And was the money forthcoming to fund this, or did you have to just
No,
gradually build it up?
what happened was, you see, if, for instance, there was a new school, say they amalgamated the primary schools, and they want to have a new school, and amalgamating maybe 3 schools, you see. You went out, and as I said, you listed all the children, you know, and then you devised a transport service that would suit all those children and bring them into school for, say, 9 o'clock and take them home again at 3. See? Now, if you had that all set up, then you had to refer it to Ulsterbus, and they had first refusal. And they always refused it because, you see, Ulsterbus, they have buses, and unless the wheels are turning, they don't want anything, you know. So they couldn't look after a transport service whereby the buses would be lying up from 10 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the evening, doing nothing, you see. We were different in that we employed the driver to do a bit of caretaking or do grounds work, you know, so it was all right. But still, they wouldn't do it, and then what we did then, was a letter when, of course, Dr. Dixon did all that. He wrote down to the Department of Education, and he explained to them, you see, that it had been referred to Ulsterbus and that they weren't keen to do it. And he would have asked for X number of buses, and the cost of the buses at the time, you know. And then the board would have, or the Department of Education would have agreed it. And then we had to get those buses built. So tenders had to go out to have the buses built. And then when they arrived, they went into service, and hopefully it would work all right. Now, I must say, I never had any trouble, you know. I say I loved the job looking after the school buses.
Then also in Omagh, were you involved in the YMCA?
Oh, well, surely, aye.
Could you tell me a bit about the YMCA in Omagh?
Well, the old building up on High Street, you know, it was a grand place, but then, you know, we got to the stage where we couldn't keep it up. You know, it needed a lot of repairs. So we used to, the YM owned all that ground, and they owned all the land that the sawmill was on. They owned all that land right down to the bottom of Scarce Entry, and they owned the field where where all the car parks are there, on the right, going up, on the right. They owned all that, and it was sold for just sold at the wrong time. You see, things hadn't come in and went up and bumped up, but it was sold, and then of course the old building was beginning to deteriorate, and it was costing a lot of money to keep it up. So we thought it would be better to sell it and buy some other premises. So it just so happened that Graham's Printing Works, which was down in Campsie Avenue there, in around Campsie Avenue, that it came on the market. They moved out to the Gordon Road, in a new place. So that was bought then, and we had room there for 2 billiard tables and about 5, maybe 6 table tennis tables, and we had a TV room and a few things like that, So it was a good enough place, and of course we had a bit of money behind us then, The money that was in the bank kept the place going, more or less. So. But I spent a good many years in the YM, and it was a great place to go, because if you were keen on snooker or billiards, and on table tennis and things like that. And then we used to have tennis teams. We played down, and we used to rent the grounds down at the swinging bars, you see. And we went there, and we had hockey teams and football teams. So it was a fairly good organisation, in those years, and we're always busy and doing something,
Were you involved in the YMCA over the war years?
In the war years?
Aye, and after the war
years?
Oh,
it was surely. I used to go down there when I was finished work, you see, and I would have played billiards with somebody, and the military used to come in, and would have played, some of them right good players too, and then there was a canteen there where the military could come down at night, and go in and have a cup of tea and that sort of thing,
And what about the Americans? Did they ever come down at all during the war?
Well, I don't remember much about the Americans. The only thing I remember about the Americans, they used to come in, and there would maybe be an odd row about the Cafe Rex there. Boy, they were sharp. I remember being down one night, and the MPs come down, and had one of these wee jeeps, with their legs hanging out on, and had big long truncheons on length, and went into that. And they didn't miss any Yankee soldier that was in that place. It didn't matter whether they were innocent or not. They got clipped, and they were just thrown in a pile under the wee jeep. Away they went. I think they were based maybe in Carrickmore at the time. There was some of them based up there, but that was the only time I saw them really,
Well, then when the British soldiers were down, did they stay in the camp, or were they based anywhere else in Omagh other than the
I
camp?
can't remember, to tell you the truth. It may have been, because there was a lot of halls. I think the church hall, St Columba's Church Hall, I think there was maybe soldiers in that at the time, but just vaguely I can't, remember so much. They were here and there, surely, all over the place.
Well then, what about the YMCA? Has its role changed much over the years from you were involved from the beginning?
Well, not really. I don't think the young people now are as keen on going to it as they were, You see, there's too much television and there's too much other things to see, So, but there's a lot of schoolboys go to it, Young fellas out of school, they go, So it still has a healthy enough membership,
Did you find then that the schools would encourage the fellas to join the YMCA?
Well, there never was any objections, because there never was any, what you might say, rows about it, They were all right good lads, I found anyway,
It's a rare thing when young people are gathered together. They can be peaceful.
Well, I wouldn't have got away with anything. You see, we had a caretaker there, you know, and I was writing sharp, you know, and I wouldn't have got abused on the tables or anything like that, you know. And then they were all there to do something, particularly in the table tennis. And then that were at the table tennis, they were really, in a way, fanatics, you know. They played away. You know.
Well, you were from New Brighton Terrace. Where did you, when you first got married then, where did you move to? Did you stay in New Brighton Terrace?
Well, I married and I stayed down at the wife's place for, I think about a year, you know. And then I had to travel up and down all the time, you know. I had a wee, one of those wee motorbikes. And of course, I never travelled home on it. I just went up to Pomeroy to get a train, you know. So it wasn't a big job. And then if it worked out that I couldn't get down, I usually stayed with my mother, you see, in New Brighton Terrace. So it wasn't a big handicap. So then there was the aluminium bungalows went up there, and I put in for one of them. I was lucky enough I got one. So I was there for a good while, and then I moved down here then. I think it's just how long we were up there. I'm sure it was maybe 10 years, you know, and then I moved down here. So we're here now 25 years, I think, here in the wife's friend. She keeps a note of all these things. But Omagh wasn't a bad place to live, you know, because I remember when we lived up in New Brighton Terrace, Paddy McCaffrey or not, believe it or not, he was a great man for soccer at that time, you know. And we used to go down to the slaughterhouse and get a bladder out of the pig and put it into the football and blow it up, and away we'd go up to Campbell's Fields, and then we used to get chased out of them. But we used to always play a match against Campsey Road, the Tourneys and Sweeney's, and them, you know. We used to play a match there, and we used to play around where James Aiken has the garage. That ground belonged to the Academy. The Academy school was up on the main street, you see, and then they had that ground and at the back. And at that time, you know, there was no Welworth or Picture House. There was a Picture House went there first. And we went there to play football, and we always played Campsey. And Gussie Haynes and all that, Hayneses and all that crowd, we played. It was great times, right?
Did you win?
Oh, I think I won one, lost one, you know.
Well,
it was a good crack.
You know, if you look back to the late teen years, you know, when you think of the awkward age of 18, 19 and 20, what was it like growing up in Omagh?
Well, the only thing that probably worried everybody, especially young lads, up until the war started, was a job. You couldn't get work, you know. I remember whenever I left school, my father worked for Albert Allen. He was a builder, you know, and he tried to get me in as an apprentice. And you had to pay at that time. You had to pay, I think it was £50 or something a week to be in as an apprentice. They wouldn't touch me. I was score. So that's the situation, you know. And houses, there were houses vacant all over the place. There were houses vacant for years. I remember a house at the foot of New Brighton Terrace, and it was lying vacant for years, for a long time. So, as I say, there was no push for work, there's no work for anybody at all, you know. Unless, as I say, you got a job at the railway, you know. A policeman and a railway man would have been counted as top jobs.
Is many's a gay night from dark till daylight I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.